Konami's long-running series of visual novels/dating simulators started way back in 1994, with the first game, simply called Tokimeki Memorial, being released for the PC Engine's Super CD, and has since had 8 mainline entries and a whole Love Island's worth of spin-offs, not to mention manga, anime, board games, and even a live-action film based on it. Tokimeki is a word that doesn't necessarily have an exact direct translation into English, but it essentially means excitement or something like that, but not just generic everyday excitement that you might feel when you see a new PO-cubed video in your YouTube feed, but more like the fluttering of your heart or the palpitations you get when you see someone you really want to engage in the old horizontal refreshments with, if you know what I'm saying. Before you think they were aimed at girls, as it happens, these games have you playing the protagonist, who is usually a male, trying to seduce a bunch of women. There are some where you play as the girls' side sub-series that seems to be a bit more popular these days. You have lots of different suitors that you need to focus all your attention on, not your schoolwork or sports attainment. This guy's got his priorities sorted, and the games are pretty non-linear in terms of who you end up going with and so on. You really do play the field, and a lot of the gameplay revolves around keeping a rigorous dating schedule, going on the very brief dates, making sure all the girls are happy and not neglected, and also some extracurricular stuff like school and clubs and sport if you have the time. Like I say, this guy's not really interested in these things for his own personal development. The only intrinsic value to doing stuff is to boost your stats and thus make yourself more desirable. This Game Boy Color pair of cartridges takes a lot of the source material from the debut 1994 release. Across the two versions, Culture Hen and Sports Hen, there are 10 girls to date from Kiremeki High School, 5 on each version, plus 3 new unlockable girls that didn't feature in any other port, including the series' first non-Japanese girl. It also has some pretty cool Super Game Boy support, and a Beatmania minigame, a series we'd actually see a fair bit on the Game Boy Color as it happens. A key part of the tactics, as mentioned, comes from keeping all of your prospective girlfriends happy. The game introduces this bomb feature, whereby if you neglect someone, i.e. don't take them out on dates enough, they'll eventually become angry and flame you to their friends, which can severely reduce your love meters across the board. They're not mad that you're two-timing them and playing the field, they're mad that you're not doing it enough. It makes scheduling dates well really paramount, not leaving anyone out, especially towards the middle of a run when you've come across lots of girls. Not like that, as one of these bombs can effectively ruin your chances of getting with anyone. Each playthrough constitutes 3 years of high school and might take you anywhere between 5 and 10 hours depending on how thorough or how sleazy you are, after which the character with the highest love meter confesses their love. If you were going to play this expecting some really intense or deep character interaction, you might be a smidge disappointed. To balance out the sheer number of activities and dates you'll have to plan, the dates themselves are actually really brief, often constituting only a bit of dialogue and a single multiple-choice question that determines whether the meter goes up or down. It's pretty shallow, in the same way that a person who dates 10 girls at once would be, but there are other games in the genre that'll scratch that itch if meaningful interactions are what you're after. What Tokimeki Memorial Pocket does have going for it is some rather exquisite presentation, probably the best on the Game Boy Color so far. The artwork throughout is fantastic in this really nicely detailed anime style that you'd expect from the pros over at Konami. There are some surprisingly emotive animations featuring silhouettes that accentuate pivotal points in the story in a very creative manner. One thing to note is that although this game is technically backwards compatible, it can be very sluggish on the original Game Boy. I think this has something to do with the differing clock speeds of the two consoles. It still works, like I say, but the game is optimally played on the GBC. The real highlight for me, however, and the reason that I knew of this game beforehand, is the soundtrack. There is some impressively clear voice acting in parts. It's a little bit quiet, but you can make out what's being said, which is unusual in itself for the Game Boy, although not unheard of. Although in a kind of flip side to the DMG lag issues I mentioned a second ago, weirdly the voices don't play properly if you try to play this in a Game Boy Advance, so if you are doing that, you'll have to turn them off. It's something to do with how the GBA processes sound information rather than a problem with the game itself. Honestly though, as good as the voice production is, it's secondary to the music. one of the best in the whole Game Boy family, Advance included, and I don't say that lightly. The OST is over an hour long and features some wonderful variation from 4 of Konami's best composers. It's not that often that I highlight individual people who worked on a game by name, but Takeshi Iwakiri, Seiko Kabuchi, Kozo Nakamura, and Tomoaki Hirono have created something here that truly shines. And it's an absolute goldmine for video background music as well. You'll often hear me put stuff from this soundtrack behind my top 10 video lists and stuff. If you want uplifting, sad, energetic, tense, you name it, it has it all somewhere in there. Were this a different type of channel, I'd talk for 20 minutes about the soundtrack, but instead, I'll just say this game is definitely worth a playthrough or two just to hear the music. Pretty much a masterpiece for this system. Oh, and the game's fun too.